可以開始個會議啦。
We can call the meeting to order now. Item 1 on the agenda: information papers issued since the last meeting. We've got 4 information papers that have been issued, and that is in item 1. Item 2. On the 19th of June, we will hold our next regular meeting, and let us look at the items for discussion. May I refer you to paper 14. That's paper 922. I'd like to propose 2 items. One, the curtailing of contract for J. Walder. Last time I mentioned that we should hold a special meeting, but sorry, we could not find a venue because our schedule is extremely tight. So I'd like to take that up next time. Secondly, taxi services as part of the public transport strategy study. And number 3, MTR fare adjustment. In fact, this is already listed in the agenda today. Next time, they will come back to let us know what exactly they propose to do. Members, what do you think about these 3 items? Mr. Chen Han-pan, since we can have a chance to speak on MTR fare today, next time maybe we can spare more time to item 8, and that is urban parking. Because the situation is quite serious now, I'd like to see whether you can take that up with the administration so we can list it on the agenda for the next meeting. We'll record your proposal and we'll take it up with the administration. But let us see how things go after we take up the MTR fare adjustment issue to see whether members have any comments or demands. Mr. Frankie Yik, I agree with Mr. Chen Han-pan because the second item on today's agenda is directly related with the sufficiency or otherwise of urban parking. I'd like you to make a proposal as soon as possible. Right, thank you. Deputy Chairman, earlier on, there was the garage explosion. It was an unfortunate incident and it has aroused a lot of concern. Some people say we should take it up either at the planning or development or transport area. I am very concerned. I'd like to take it up somewhere. My understanding is that the Security Bureau will be issuing an investigation report. It is almost done now. And the Environment Affairs panel is prepared to take it up because it is the Bureau leading the investigation. So actually that panel will be scrutinizing the report from the Security Bureau. I am actually thinking whether our panel should hold a joint meeting with the EA panel. What do you think, members? And if you agree, I can take this up with Gary Chan. What do you think? Mr. Frankie Yik. I agree, Chairman. In fact, it's not just this issue. If you look at small garages in the urban area, when a small old district is redeveloped, the garages will disappear, but then we have an increasing number of private cars, and the cars cannot be taken back to the mainland for maintenance. I think the problem is surfacing. You have to find alternative space to house these small garages. Well, okay, then we can take it up with Mr. Gary Chan. Leave it to me. Next, item 3 on the agenda. Replacement of tunnel lighting system in the Kai Tak Tunnel. We have about half an hour for this. May I refer you to paper CB4 92203. May we invite the administration to come in now.
Can
we ask the administration team to come in now, please?
我哋今日有呢個
Today, we have the Undersecretary for Transport and Housing, Ms. Ivy Law, and a few other officials attending for this item. They are from the Bureau and also from EMSD and also TD. Welcome. Who will take us through the paper, please? Thank you, Chairman and members. Good morning. The existing lighting tunnel system in Kai Tak has been existent since 1982, and the TLS mainly includes lighting fittings, power supply equipment, cables, and the control system. So the TLS has operated for over 30 years and it has reached the end of its economic serviceable life. And in fact, the market is not supplying part of the or some of the spare parts and accessories already. If we do not replace it in good time, and if it should fail at any time and we cannot find spare parts, then the KTT would be affected. So we propose to replace the TLS to maintain the stability, reliability, and efficiency of the TLS. We expect that it will cost us $85.9 million. Since the new system will have higher or better energy efficiency, we expect that the recurrent cost later on will be lower than that caused by the existing one. After consulting the TP, we'd like to submit the proposal to FC in June 2015, and we hope to start the project in August this year. Replacing the TLS in good time is to enhance stability, reliability, and efficiency of TLS, and that's an important thing. We hope members will support us. Thank you, Chairman. It's now time for members to ask questions. Now we have two. Do we have other members who would like to speak?
If not, may I suggest that each member be given 5 minutes. Mr. Wong Kwok-hing. Thank you. Chairman, I won't take 5 minutes. I think the replacement of the lighting system is necessary. Although I'm not a driver myself, but I frequently take other forms of transport and pass through the area. It is indeed true that the lighting system there, or the design of the system there, is way behind the latest design. So I hope that the design of the lighting system could actually, be updated to the latest standard, so that drivers and passengers going to the area would be able to have a more comfortable, journey, and that the journey be safer. So I support the proposal. You don't need a response from the administration. Thank you. Mr. Pun Siu-ping. Thank you. I also frequently use this tunnel, and I also agree that we need to replace the lighting system there. But the overall cost for the project, $80-odd million. For item C, the EMSTF project management charge, which is more than $10 million. You, of course, justify that in paragraph 9. That is, you need to arrange for the tender supervising the installation, testing, and commissioning of the new system, monitoring the operation of the system, and defect rectification work. We're talking about more than $10 million for project management. That is not actually the cost for the project itself, but rather it's cost in terms of staff, expenses or emoluments. So, and the whole management charge is more than $10 million. Could you explain why that is so expensive? And you say that you will start the work in 2016, and that you will only be able to conduct the testing in March 2019. So the project will only be completed in March 2019, and it's going to take 3 years. So does it really, does it really take so long to replace a lighting system like that? Of course, you told us that you need to close off the tunnel at night to carry out the works because there will be impact on the traffic arrangements. But my question is whether or not it really has to take that long. Permanent Secretary, regarding the timetable for the replacement of the lighting system, as members have pointed out, the replacement of the lighting system has to be done at night after we've closed one of the tubes. We need to do that because we don't want to disrupt the traffic in the tunnel. Every month when the tube in the tunnel is closed, routine maintenance and cleansing will be done. And normally it's done about a dozen of times in a month. And so we need to conduct the replacement during such specified times. And such works involving the replacement of the lighting system is comparable to those of the other tunnels. And secondly, members asked a question regarding the management charge by the EMS Trading Fund and why it's more than 10 million and what are the works involved. Actually, the replacement of the lighting system is a rather technical, process, and the role of the Transport Housing Bureau has to ensure that the whole project or the works will not have any impact on the traffic situation. So we've actually worked with the Transport Department and the EMSD Trading Fund, and through the service contract we will ensure that in the course of the project the contractor will conduct such works without affecting the safety of the tunnel, and that the works performed will satisfy the standards laid down by our departments and also those of and also international standards. And the percentage taken up by the management charge here is similar to those of major projects in the market. Dr. Wong Kwok, thank you. Personally, I drive through the tunnel from time to time, and indeed this tunnel is a very important truck road. However, the tunnel has been in use for a long time, and it is necessary that we replace the lighting system. I'm considered now that we have this opportunity to replace the lighting system. How can we ensure that the system will become more energy efficient and environmentally friendly? The paper tells us that that it is expected that the new system can save energy by up to 3 to 5%. I think that figure is low. If we could adopt the more and more popular LED lighting systems or other energy efficient and environmentally friendly lighting fixtures, I'm sure we'll be able to save more energy. So could the Bureau explain what sort of lighting technology you intend to use and whether or not we can achieve a higher energy efficiency? I will answer the question and I'll ask the EMSC to further supplement. For the lighting system, we want to use T5 fluorescent tubes. We're now using T8. T5 is more energy efficient than T8. Other than the T5 lighting fixtures, there are also lighting system at the entrance and the exit to the tunnel, which actually will automatically, adjust the lighting according to the ambient environment. So in the whole project, we've considered whether we should use LED lights because it is regarded by the market as more energy efficient. In fact, T5 compared with LED lights, I think it's comparable to LED, and it's almost 80 or 90% comparable to LEDs in terms of energy efficiency. But the LEDs may not actually be suitable for use in the tunnel because of the temperature inside the tunnel, and that's why we've decided not to use LED lights. Perhaps the EMSD can further supplement. Mr. Chen. Regarding the project to replace the lighting system, we have conducted market studies and found that at the entrance to the tunnel where we have the more powerful, where we need more powerful lighting, we do not have such powerful LED lights in the market yet, and it's not very efficient. Furthermore, it's very expensive. It's about 6 or 7 times more expensive than the high pressure lighting system that we use at the moment, and that's why we do not recommend the use of LED lighting. As for the lighting system within the tunnel, we are now using T8 fluorescent tubes, and it's not a very good performer in terms of energy efficiency. We have looked at the markets currently available in the market, and we have found that the performance of the T5 lighting fixture is a lot better than T8. LED lights indeed can be even, it's 10 to 20% more efficient than T5 in terms of energy efficiency, but it's more expensive, and also it's not yet very popularly used. Now, if we purchase a particular type of LED lights, and when they are going to be replaced in future, we need to also buy the same model, and it may not be very cost effective. Furthermore, the LED lights normally would operate in an environment where the ambient temperature is about 45 degrees, but given the ventilation and the temperature within the tunnel, the temperature is about 40 to 50 degrees, and that might affect the stability of the LED lighting, and that's why we do not recommend using LED lights for the new system. Chairman, well, I think that is too conservative. If you say that T5 tubes, you're talking about energy efficiency lighting. I think times are changing, and I recommend that before we go to the BWSC, we can have a better preparation, and the department give us a better explanation, and also try to find out whether there are more environmentally friendly lighting systems. I mean, although it's more expensive, I think we eventually will actually, be able to balance that or recover that through energy savings. In the 1980s, the Line Rock Tunnel and the Harbour Tunnel was built. I'd like to ask whether or not we still have projects in the pipeline for the replacement of such public lighting systems. I think for the Transport and Housing Bureau, do you have any such projects coming on stream? So far, the tunnels which require to have the lighting system replaced, I think earlier on we've already replaced the lighting system for the Shing Mun Tunnel. We're now proposing to replace the system for the Kai Tak Tunnel, and if need be, if it's necessary to replace the system in other tunnels, we will inform LegCo. Other than the lighting system, what about the fire services and also the ventilation system? Is it necessary to replace such systems? We don't have any specific timetable as to what systems need to be replaced, but in our daily work, we need to monitor the operation of such systems, and if need be, we will put forward the proposals. So you've already completed the replacement of the system in Shing Mun Tunnel. I think we've already applied for the replacement, and it will be done in a few years. So you say the economic serviceable life is about 25 years. I'm sure the Lions Rock Tunnel and the Cross Harbour Tunnel have already been built for more than 25 years. I think for the Lion Rock Tunnel, the system was replaced in 1998. Same for the Cross Harbour Tunnel. Yes, it was done in 2005. So going forward, you won't need to spend public funds to replace any more systems. So far, there are no specific plans, but we still need to closely monitor the situation. Mr. Hon WONG Kwok-hing. I think 1/6 of the cost is the management charge, and I think that is quite expensive. Many members already asked their questions. on this. So could you give us more details? Dr. Low suggested you use LED lights, and the government is telling us that you can't use such systems when the temperature is 40 to 50 degrees. So could you give us more details so that we can decide who is right or wrong? I think Dr. Low represents the engineering sector. He insists that it could be used. I tend to believe that he is right, but you have to prove that he is right. I think it shouldn't be the case that he just, make a comment and just leave. I'm just, speaking off the top of my head. Now, 1/6 of the project cost goes to management charges. So how did you call the tender? Was it like the XRL, where you will pay the contractor to manage the tunnel, or what? I think about 60% is quite expensive. Thank you. In my response earlier, I already pointed out that the EMS trading fund is charging a certain percentage for the management costs, and I think the charge is comparable to those of the market. And we've decided to engage the EMS trading fund because the EMS has always been appointed by the government to monitor the operation, the ventilation, and the lighting system of this tunnel. And we've all along asked the EMSD to do that.
So the EMSD is very experienced and it understands the operation of the tunnel. When the EMSD is entrusted to monitor the replacement done by the contractor, it will help to ensure that the new TLS will meet the requirements of the various departments and will serve the public well. In fact, the trading fund has already completed 30 such replacement works, and it has operated well and the track record is good. So we have decided to entrust the works this time to the EMSD trading fund, so the operation of the tunnel will not be affected, so the public will not be affected. Okay, I understand you. You mean it is well established and it is a government department. Well, but is it a government department or is it just a trading fund? Is it that a department operates a fund and it serves the government? Or is it that it is for the trading fund to commission a private contractor to do the works? Deputy Secretary, the EMSD itself is a department, but there is another part to it. It is a self-sufficient trading fund. In this project, it is the supervisor of the contractor. Understood. I think there is a monopoly here. The EMSD has always been entrusted to look after tunnels because tunnels are government projects. In other words, there is no competition. I'm sure it enjoys the market dominance advantage since you refer all these works to them. However, you tell me it is a self-sufficient trading fund. In other words, it doesn't operate as a government department. I'd like to know whether you'd like to introduce market competition into this. I know this is a kind of natural monopoly, but have you asked other contractors to put in a bid to compete with the EMSD trading fund? Thank you. As I said, the replacement of the TLS is not just about the TLS. We have to look at the other operations of the tunnel, like monitoring, ventilation, and the traffic inside the tunnel. The entrusted party must have some knowledge of all these. And some members asked about the duration of the project, which is 44 months, and that it is on the high side. And if we find somebody which does not know about the operation of tunnels well, the progress of the works may be affected, and traffic around the tunnel will also be affected. So, Chairman, we think it is appropriate to entrust it to the trading fund. Chairman, I hope you can introduce some fairness into this. Say something, because you have been the chairman of the KCRC before. This is natural monopoly, but time is up. No, just speak up, Chairman. Next one, Mr. Wu Chi-wai. Thank you, Chairman. The footnote says that the new system is expected to consume about 3 to 5% less electricity. This is the trading fund's preliminary estimation. When we talk about energy efficiency today, if you go for such a big project costing over $80 million and yet the energy saved would just be 3 to 5%, I think it has failed us. When the EMSD handles such large projects, is it that they do not require themselves to save a certain amount of energy so that it thinks a saving of 3 to 5% is okay? We understand that many contractors are happy to provide and install and maintain LED lights free of charge because they would like to share the energy saved with the OCs or MACs. In other words, the manufacturers of LED lights are very confident about the energy that can be saved because they think that just by saving the energy, they can already recover the cost of the project, and sometimes they can even have a profit. So I think it's up to the EMSD to explain to us. Well, you said a lot. You said it would not be reliable, etc., etc. But I think you need to say more. And I have this question for the government. In replacing such TLS, do you place a requirement or an indicator requirement on the EMSD? So the EMSD has to come up with a project that will reap the best energy efficiency. DS, I can tell members clearly that every time when we have a TLS replacement, energy efficiency is an important consideration, and that is why the EMSD has gone for the system that will be purchased. Now, of course, we need to look at the supervision of the works later on. What about 3 to 5%? We do not have a hard target or indicator, but we have put in a requirement of energy efficiency because we want to be a green government. Departments know very well that they need to attend to this aspect when the system is replaced. Now, I just want to point out to you, LED lighting compared to T8 fluorescent tubes, there is a difference of 80% energy consumption between them. This is what I know. But you are only talking about 3 to 5% savings here. This is way below what we can expect in terms of energy saving. So is it that you don't know about this, or is it that the EMSD has not told you about the energy saving level? Mr. Wu has talked about 80% and you are only talking about 3 to 5%. Please explain. Just now the EMSD has already explained why we don't go for LED lighting. There are a few factors, and the most important one is that the LED will have to operate in an environment of 45 degrees. Mr. Wu talked about domestic use or shopping malls, but tunnels operate in a different environment. There, the temperature is about 50 degrees. So perhaps we should not use LED lighting in tunnels. We go for T5. And T5 is more or less like LED. You mean T5 is much better than T8? Yes, T5 vis-a-vis LED, it can save 80% to 90% of the energy. And the other batch is high-pressure sodium lighting. As the MSD has explained, it is a very strong light, and the LED lighting cannot provide that kind of light strength. Mr. Chen of EMSD, Chairman, let me add. Indeed, for indoor lighting, LED is the popular choice. But in large venues, high power lighting is required, and it is not as popular as the domestic use. But then most of the lighting in tunnels will be inside tunnels, so it is indoor lighting, and you can have a mix of different lighting. Why don't you consider the issue from this angle? Well, LED might not be mature in the past, but then it has developed over the years. Sorry, the time is up. Let me give you a hand, Mr. Wu. I can follow up because I can use my own time now. Some members are of the view that LED can save energy up to more than 80% of that can be saved by T8. And you tell us that T5 and LED is almost the same, that it can save 80 to 90% of the energy. And in this paper, you said that you would have T5 and then the original T8 will only give you 3 to 5%. But then I don't think that the figures add up. The sums don't add up. Unless you don't agree that compared to T8, LED can save 80% of the energy. Now, how much energy can be saved if you replace T8 with LED? Chairman, let me say it again. Maybe we did not say it clearly. Right, you did not say it clearly. In the tunnel, there will be two kinds of lighting equipment. The T5 will replace T8. These are the fluorescent tubes, and the other one is the high-pressure sodium lighting. Right now, we are not going to replace it with other lighting. As EMSD has explained, right now we cannot have any LED which can have the same efficiency as high-pressure sodium lighting. So there are two kinds of lighting equipment. T5, indeed, is a very good improvement over T8. But then there are two kinds of lighting systems which will be used together. And the cumulative energy saving will be 3 to 5% taken together. So we are not just talking about T5 replacing T8. We have heard members and the chairman. You say that we should carefully look at energy saving. We have talked to the EMSD. When LED technology will further develop and becomes mature, and if later on the operating environment is such that it can be used within tunnels, then maybe it can eventually replace the high-pressure sodium lighting. We have asked the EMSD to keep track of technology developments and advancement, and if at the appropriate time, you can have it replaced. Please give me back 2 minutes because I'm using my own 5 minutes. Okay, next time when you submit your papers again, please explain clearly that there are two kinds of lighting, not just one type of lighting equipment. So one part of it is very efficient and the other one is not. Then you have to tell us the cumulative effect. And I can tell you, you did not write your paper in a careful manner. What you tell us in the paper is not what you are telling us at the meeting here. Please respect us and write better papers because we have experts among us. And the other question is, listening to you, is it that the tunnels have never used LED and not in the near future either? Because I can assume that inside tunnels the temperature is always high. Chairman, as we said, LED technology will be developing. I'm talking about now. Is it that none of our tunnels use LED lighting? No. What about the near future? Is it that unless there will be a breakthrough, and it is because the operating temperature is not the right one? Chairman, we have not adopted LED lighting, and the EMSD has applied different factors for consideration. One is the temperature, as said by Mr. Chan. And it may not be very stable. If we buy from one contractor, the specifications may not be the same. So you are saying unless there is a big breakthrough of LED technology, you will not use it in the near future. Is that right? You are not talking about a particular characteristic of this tunnel. Yes, you can put it that way, Chairman. Lastly, the 15% management charges. Is it the same regardless of the supervision required? Is that right? Sometimes projects are easily supervised. It may be routine kind of supervision. And most of the cost is placed on the hardware. But then another project may require a lot more supervision. Do you always apply a 15%? We use 15% for TLS replacement, but I do not have information about other projects. So it is regardless of the difficulty of supervision of any project. Well, if we are talking about replacing TLS in tunnels, it is always the same. Okay, it's almost time, but we have Albert Chan who has not spoken. Mr. Chan? Sorry. Frankie Yik will also speak for the first time. Mr. Frankie Yik first, and then Mr. Albert Chan, all right? I'll be brief. About T5, T8, I myself did a lot of testing. I think about 15 to 20% energy can be saved. It is very good for tunnels because tunnels need 24-hour lighting. The Bureau, you have explained that there is a combination of two systems. You should not lump the two together. You should let us know the efficiency that can be gained from the replacement project. So you should tidy up your paper. And in fact, compared to LED, T5, you said, can achieve 80% energy efficiency. But I have not heard about it. To me, LED should be the most energy efficient. Maybe the EMSD should provide some proof for that statement. Mr. Chan, Chairman, we have done market research on lighting and also with manufacturers of lighting equipment.
We've obtained the pamphlets from the lighting manufacturers, and based on such information, this is how we arrive at the conclusion. We're talking about lighting systems which are suitable for use in tunnels. Well, Chairman, if a large department like the EMSD, I don't think you should just, compare the information from such pamphlets. In the group which I work for, when we conducted tests of T5 and T8, I conducted more than 10, a few tests. And I don't think you just try simply, obtain information from pamphlets. Albert Chan, Chairman, having heard the response from the EMSD, I'm really shocked. For a large department like the EMSD, you have to rely on the publicity materials of the manufacturer to as a reference. Now, whether or not the information provided by the supplier is really questionable. How can you rely on the information they provide you? I don't think this is totally unprofessional, and you're simply relying on the manufacturers. I don't know how the government operates these days. Chairman, we were told about the temperature in the tunnel and that the LEDs cannot work in such an environment. While I'm not an expert, but I know that the temperature in different tunnels are different. It's not the case that all tunnels have such high ambient temperature, and even the temperature in different locations of the tunnel are different. In the more serious areas, it could be up to 50 degrees centigrade, but I think in the majority of the places inside the tunnel, the temperature would not be so high. Since LED lights can save energy, could they consider where certain parts of the tunnel will have an ambient temperature which will never go to such a high level, and then you could use LEDs there? And you may not have to be so rigid that only a certain percentage of the tunnel used LED lights. Any response? No. Permanent Secretary, the members suggested that the temperature at different parts of the tunnel may be different. In future, when we implement this project, we will ask the EMSD to see whether there are better ways to enhance energy efficiency, and if need be, we could make the necessary adjustments. We will certainly, make such arrangements with the EMSD. So members don't have to worry that in future, when there are better and more energy efficient lightings, we would not use them. So we certainly conduct an overall assessment. If you have completed such a study, please give us a copy of your conclusions. We really would like to know how you conduct your study and how bureaucratic and rigid you can be. You told us that you are relying on the promotion materials of the manufacturers to help the EMS team make its decision. This is unacceptable. Where are all the scholars and academics and all the research institutions? How can you base your conclusion on that? Chairman, I really don't know what else to say. Perhaps, Chairman, I could clarify. I wasn't saying that we are relying on the promotion brochures of the manufacturers, but rather their product specifications. We have to depend on the manufacturers for the specifications, because different manufacturers may come up with new products at any time. We are relying not on the promotion materials but the specs. Why don't you conduct actual site tests? I mean, even Mr. Yik's company actually carried out trials. It's not a difficult task for you to conduct trials. I don't believe that your EMSD doesn't have the manpower to conduct such simple tests. Normally, the product specifications represent a pledge of the manufacturer, but that doesn't mean that if we bought the product from the market, the results of our test will represent the spec of that product. In our tender document, if we, make reference to the same standard, the manufacturer will have to comply with the same specifications before we will take delivery. So we do not just rely on what we can procure in the market and then come to a decision after we've done our tests. We have to make reference of the product specifications from the manufacturer. I will not rule out the need for the government experts to obtain such specifications from the manufacturer. My criticism was that you shouldn't just rely solely on that. Mr. Yik told us already that as a business organization, he told us how they work. The government is relying on the manufacturer is not, prepared to conduct its own independent test. Okay, time is up. Many members have queried the data you gave us, the T5, T8. You told us that you have 2 lighting systems in the tunnel. So in your paper for the next meeting, please explain clearly how you arrive at that average figure. The government told us that energy efficiency is not the only consideration. Temperature is not the only consideration. The other point they brought up was instability, and we don't know how important that factor is. Why is it that you have totally ruled out LEDs? We have overrun by 15 minutes already. So may I ask whether the government members are in favor of the government submitting this paper to the PWSC, and that they should also respond to all the queries made today. Chairman. Very often we ask the government to respond, and when they go to the PWSC, they will simply be repeating what they're already telling us today. If that's the case, I would like the government to rather give us a more detailed answer. Are you saying that we should, deal with this further at our next meeting? We already have lots on the agenda for the next meeting already. Today, I don't think they're able to give us a paper that is convincing members. So I don't think we should just likely pass it on to the PWSC, and then they will simply give us a single-page document. Right. How about the other members? Now, members have asked various questions. Please give us a written reply as soon as possible. Well, if I may suggest, why don't I consult with members? Do members think that we should wait for those papers before we decide whether or not to submit this to the PWSC, or should we make a decision today? Mr. Tony Chairman. I think the panel very often would focus on the principles or matters relating to the technology or a certain type of installation. I think for technical issues, when I think it's appropriate for the PWSC to discuss this paper because it can look into the technical aspects. So whether or not we need to replace these facilities, whether we should do it or not, apparently the lighting system has been in use for so long, and I don't think we can wait any further. Now, why don't I then suggest that we support the government taking this funding application to the PWSC on condition that they should respond to all the questions raised by members today with proper, specifications and data, so that if we have any further views, we can express them at the PWSC meeting. All right? Thank you very much. With that, I think we can wrap up our discussion on this item. And the next item is the government's response to the report on study of road traffic congestion in Hong Kong. Many members have already put up their hands, and we're talking about paper 5. And we welcome the government representatives to our meeting. We welcome the 6 representatives from the government. Professor Anthony Cheung is personally leading his team. Secretary, we have overrun a bit already, so could you please walk us through your paper? Chairman, last year the TAC, in response to my invitation, conducted a study on road traffic congestion in Hong Kong and submitted a report to myself in December last year. That report has now been published, and today I'm here to give members the government's response. First of all, I'd like to thank the chairman and members of TAC for conducting this study on road traffic congestion, which is a matter of concern to the public. They looked into the causes of traffic congestion and came up with 12 short, medium, and long-term measures to alleviate the problem. They've also suggested some, practical solutions to the problem. In principle, the government agree with all these 12 measures and intend to implement them in stages. In deciding on the specific details of these measures, we have to consider the needs of the community, public opinion, views from stakeholders, the resource requirements, the latest technology, development, and so on, and overseas experience. Well, road traffic congestion is deteriorating all the time in Hong Kong. The average speed on the road is slowing down. It's even as slow as 10 kilometers during the morning peak hours, which is slightly faster than the walking speed of an adult, which is 45 kilometers per hour. And because of that, it is a cost to the drivers and pedestrians. It also pollutes the environment. So indeed, we need to address the problem of road congestion. We are determined to come up with effective measures, work with the public, and adopt a multi-pronged approach to relieve the congestion on our roads. And I'm going to give you our response to the recommendation of the TDC. First of all, the TAC proposed that we should adopt approved measures to control the number of vehicles The TAC report suggests that the growth in the vehicle number is one of the main reasons for congestion, especially the growth in private vehicles. From 2003 to 2013, it was up by 40%. We have a total of more than 130,000, which is 87%. Increase. If the number of vehicles increase at the current rate, 10 years later, the number may reach 1 million, of which 700,000 would be private vehicles. Given the private vehicles are less efficient than public transport in terms of the passengers they carry, so unlimited growth in vehicle numbers is not acceptable. We have to, reduce our reliance on private vehicles. The government agreed that we need to contain the growth in the number of private vehicles. The TAC came up with various proposals, including the increase in first registration tax and annual license fees, tighten up standards for environmentally friendly petrol private cars, raise a fuel levy for diesel vehicles. In the past, evidence have shown that increasing such fees was effective in controlling the growth in the number of vehicles. And secondly, how do we, make more optimal use of our roads? And the TAC suggests that we should tighten law enforcement and increase the penalty for violation of traffic regulations and consider ERP and improving on the provision of parking facilities. And we agree. On ERP, the government had conducted several studies and has confirmed that ERP indeed can help relieve traffic congestion in some of the busy areas in Hong Kong. Many overseas cities such as Singapore, London, Stockholm, and Gothenburg have already implemented such forms of electronic road pricing and have achieved considerable results. We understand that some members of the public still do not understand too much about ERP. In earlier discussions, we have not been able to arrive at a consensus as to how we can implement this scheme. Later on, the government will have a public engagement exercise to explain to the public the scheme and to listen to the views. Thirdly, to continue to step up our publicity to alleviate congestion on the roads. All the stakeholders and the whole community will need to work together. Although public education may not achieve any immediate effect, we have to do it in a sustainable manner. We have to highlight the need to relieve traffic congestion on the road so that we can improve overall efficiency and improve the living environment. The government understands, Chairman, that certain measures to alleviate road congestion may add to the cost of some of the drivers, and it may change their traveling habit. But in order for drivers to have more choice other than using private vehicles, we have already started the public transport strategy study so that we can leverage on the complementarity of different modes of transport and improve the efficiency of public transport. We've already asked the MTRC to consider, improving on the interchange facilities and also provide for more parking fees concessions in car parks in the vicinity of MTRC stations.
We are going to encourage park and ride, and will continue to step up enhancing road crossing facilities to create a pedestrian-friendly environment. And also in new towns, we're going to provide more facilities for bikers. So members of the public do not have to use mechanized transport for short journeys. These are the proposals of TAC and our response, and we welcome comments. 9 members have indicated to speak. 10. They are Wong Kwok-hing, Tian Han Pen, Lee Chek Yen, Tang Ka Piu, Michael Tian, and other people. 5 minutes each. Wong Kwok-hing. Thank you, Chairman. The TAC has put forward comments. I think among the 12, the key word is to control or to limit. I think they are preempting the situation. We are talking about increasing FRT, increasing meter charges, and also you are poised to again study the ERP. I think the entire strategy is to limit the growth of private cars by raising charges. I think that boils down to that. I'm of the view that this is not enough. We have mentioned in the past that there can be other measures to attract passengers to make use of public modes of transport and public facilities. I think that is an important consideration. But it seems amongst these 12 recommended measures, we can't see any positive incentives for the public to make use of public transport. For example, I like to talk about private cars. You are saying you want to encourage the use of electric cars. However, we don't have enough charging stations around Hong Kong. That's number one. Number two, constructing the fourth tunnel. You haven't responded to that point either. We have talked so many times about congestion in our cross-harbour tunnels. And also, taxis and PLBs have criticized many times that you should review the restricted parking areas. And I can cite an example, Kennedy Town railway station. We have heard from the industry that there is no taxi stand at Kennedy Road MTR station. So you haven't given a comprehensive consideration to the situation. And plus, we have said that there should be sectional fare for cross-harbour tunnel buses because they cannot compete efficiently with non-cross-harbour tunnel buses after they have crossed the tunnel. So cross-harbour tunnel buses are always quite empty after they have crossed the tunnel because they cannot compete for passengers. Secretary, Chairman, as I said in my opening remarks, the government thinks that we should adopt a multi-pronged approach. Of course, a preemptive approach is one of those, but it is not the only approach. But I think we have to adopt different measures. If there is an ever-growing number of private cars and we don't do anything, we just cannot catch up with the building of roads. And as you know, that may also lead to environment problems, and also it may affect the livability of our city. How can we allow members of the public not to rely so much on private cars? Well, that is important as well. And Mr. Wong has said how we should make public transport more efficient and more attractive. I will attach importance to that. Mr. Chen Han-pan, 8 of the 12 measures are for raising charges. And maybe I can say you are going to make the charges harsher. You are trying to do this to limit the growth of number of cars, but we have to know the causes. Let me talk about Yuen Long. You might think Yuen Long is not so populated and there are not many cars, but then in recent years, you can see cars queuing up. You know, I live there, and every morning I need to queue up for half an hour before I can allow my car to leave Yuen Long. Why? Because you have allowed people to move into Yuen Long, but you are not building more roads to complement the population increase. Every morning you can see congestion in Yuen Long. Even if you take a bus, the buses are extremely crowded. If you take the West Rail, again, you cannot board the first train. You may drive to Kam Tin, so you want to park and ride, but then the interchange may allow you to have a concession fare, but then the car park is full to capacity. So what do you want people to do? They can't board public transport. They can't drive to ride on the MTR. So it is you who must improve our roads in response to the population increase. This is causing congestion in our roads. And also, In certain places, there have been enough parking spaces, but then you want to use the space for housing development, like in Pt1 Pier. It is redeveloped. Before that, there were 1,000 parking spaces, and after redevelopment, you only allow 170 spaces to remain. But then there is a shopping mall and there are hotels, so you are creating congestion. And also, in certain housing developments, there are 20 stories of shopping mall, and according to the planning standards and guidelines, they can only get about 20 to 30 parking spaces, and that is for 20 stories of shopping space. What do you expect people to do? There may be a few restaurants in just one story of the entire shopping mall building, and that is enough to cause congestion. So apart from suppressing the growth of vehicles, you must do something about roads and parking spaces. You must put your heart into it and put forward meaningful proposals. I can't see the TAC do that. They haven't put forward any proposals to talk about road improvement in certain areas. It has only talked about new towns where they can provide park and ride facilities. And in urban renewal projects, the government should also do something. If these are in urban centers, then you should build a large-scale multi-story car park. And near major transport interchanges, you should also provide that kind of multi-story car park. And it is not easy to do that now. You know, the middle road car park has also been torn down. So all in all, it is a matter of the lack of parking spaces and also inefficient road improvement. So apart from raising charges, what else can you do specifically instead of just getting more money? Members, please do not ask long questions because the Secretary only has about 10 seconds. As I said in my response to Mr. Wong, we don't only rely on fees and charges. We are going to adopt a multi-pronged approach. If necessary, we will not hesitate to build more roads, but you understand it will bring about other impact. And we also have to work better on our public transport system. Mr. Lee Cheuk-yen, Chairman, I think the Secretary is adopting artful language in responding to us. He is saying he will not just seek to raise FRT or licensing charges, and he is going to have a multi-pronged approach. But if you look at your response and also the TAC measures, you can draw this conclusion safely, and that is there will be only one thrust, one way to do it, which is quick and efficient and good, and then they are going to stall on other measures. The most efficient and quickest way to do it is to increase charges. And the other considerations about park and ride, congestion relief, more efficient public transport network, road improvements, etc., they will drag their feet on these. And then we don't know how many years we have to wait. This is quite clear from the paper. Your response is only about one thing, and that is up, raising charges. Well, in the past, I might not agree, but now I think ERP is a good thing. Many people are forced to live in remote areas and they drive into the urban area, but sometimes they might not go to Central or Tsim Sha Tsui. And you can charge ERP in Central and Tsim Sha Tsui. And if people have to go to Central and Tsim Sha Tsui, you can allow them to park and ride somewhere. But we have talked about park and ride for so many years, maybe for 20 years. Have you done anything? You say you continue to study into it. And we have talked about it for so long, and yet you have not done anything. And ERP, you also say you want to continue to study into it. To me, you will just come to LegCo to ask for endorsement, to raise charges, and then you will just say you continue to look into other areas. So what you are telling us is that you just want to do one thing and come clean, Secretary. You come clean, and then we'll see whether we want to support you. We can't see you adopting a multi-pronged approach. Secretary. Chairman, I think Mr. Lee is saying that, number one, He wants the government to move quicker with ERP and do better with park and ride. We will do both. As I said in my opening remarks, later on, we will engage the public on ERP, and we will thresh out the details so we can try to forge a consensus. Indeed, over 10 odd years in the past, every time the government did a study, it could not go another step, I think for different reasons, maybe people's attitude and technology development and also opposition from motorists, etc. But I think we have come to a crunch time and we have to face up to it. Can you admit one thing? Don't raise charges before you can complete your work on other fronts. If you don't promise this, if we allow you to raise charges, you will again drag your feet for another 5-10 years. Can you promise that? No, I cannot give that undertaking. We need to have a multi-pronged approach. No, I don't think so. I think this is a single-pronged approach, and that is charges raising, and that's it. And then you are going to delay and postpone and drag your feet on the other matters. You have talked about park and ride for so many years. I'm sure this time around is the same thing. You don't have more time to answer. I think that is the case. Tan Ka Pew. Thank you, Chairman. Those who are familiar with Hong Kong transport figures will be shocked because we have an increase of population and more tourists and more people on the MTR, and we must thank the government for favoring the MTR. But then there are fewer people on our buses and taxis. What is happening? The situation is you are adopting harsh measures on private cars and you tell people to take public transport, but then the MTR is already crowded. Look at Tai Wai Station yesterday. And buses are not doing their job either. So you want to suppress the number of private cars. So where do people where can the people go by paying reasonable fares? Shouldn't the transport department be taken to task about this?
Secondly, do you have a bottom line? You say that there has been a 40% growth in a decade, which is about 4% per annum. Even after you've implemented all these measures, you still see a 4 to 5% growth. So do you have a bottom line to limit the number of private vehicles so that once it reaches a certain level, you would freeze it, as in the case of Singapore, you would resort to drawing lots, or as in the case of the mainland, you require people whose vehicle numbers are in even numbers or single numbers to only use the road on specific days of the week. How can you make the public have the confidence to use public transport? I don't think the government should refuse to come up with the funds to do it. For example, you can encourage the bus companies to. I think we would already celebrate if they don't increase the fares. You should come up with funds to compare to a KMB to come up with improvement measures so the public will have the confidence to ride on public transport rather than being forced to buy a private vehicle or travel in a private car. We're now talking to the bus companies as to how we can improve on the provision of information for passengers. We are talking to the bus company about that already. But for any improvements, it shouldn't be the case that we should use taxpayers' money to subsidize the bus companies. As an operator, the bus company has an obligation to improve the quality of service. It is only natural also that you have more people riding on the MTR. As a form of public transport, it is more convenient. And we're facing a dilemma. If we argue that because of that we shouldn't develop the railway system, that is not right. But how can we ensure that different forms of public transport, they can all play their roles effectively? And this is exactly what we are looking at and trying to resolve in the public transport strategy study. The growth in the number of private vehicles, whether it's the FRT or the annual license fees, every time we put them up, there will be an immediate impact. But then shortly afterwards, because of inflation and other changes, it's less effective, and that has been the case in the past. But if we always try to limit, it's also a question is whether or not we should only rely on limiting the number. If the problem becomes very serious, then there could be many measures which, under normal circumstances, we would not rely on. We may have to do it. So whether or not, so you're not considering whether or not the limited number, or you will start with those 12 measures recommended by the TC yet? Okay, time's up. Mr. Frankie Yek. Chairman, there are many reasons for that we have congestion on the road, and all the recommendation of TAC can be boiled down to one thing, that is increasing the levy. I think the government first of all should review its policy regarding car parks in busy areas, in the business areas, because there are no car parks. The people have to drive round and round looking for car parks. In Singapore, I've seen that they would display on the roadside the number of vacant car parks available in car parks, but the operators in Hong Kong refuse to do that because they're afraid that they might lose the business to the competitors. I think it's a good thing because people can be informed and go straight to the car park where there are spaces available. There have been sites which have been earmarked for the construction of car parks, but the government has never built those car parks. For example, the site next to the Nala in Kwun Tong, that's one example. So there's something wrong with your planning. In the whole of Tsim Sha Tsui, before the New World project is completed, you have sold the site where the Middle Road car park is located. As a result, you have illegal parking all over Tsim Sha Tsui. Obviously, there's something wrong with your planning. So I also would strongly object to the proposal to increase the FRT. I got the figures from, I understand that there have been 40% growth in number of private cars in the last 10 years. Look at Singapore, you need a COE to buy a car. Cars are 100% more expensive than Hong Kong. Over the last few years, there have been a 40% growth in the number of private cars. I don't think a fiscal solution can limit the growth in number of private cars. Mr. Chen Ban already said that we are having more and more new towns. People are living in such new towns, and we don't have proper transport planning. And and people need to drive. And now you are punishing them because you don't want to see a growth in the number of private cars, and that is not fair. You say if the fares have not been adjusted for a number of times, like parking fee charges and so on, I admit that I agree that you can increase the parking charges, but I would strongly object to putting up the FRT. And I think the government should really review this policy regarding supply of car parks. I think the problem really, we have a serious problem mainly because of the shortage of car parks. We are aware of the problems highlighted by Mr. Yek, but road congestion does not affect private vehicles alone. Of course, private vehicles will be affected. If you are a driver, you'll be affected by congestion. At the same time, it will also affect public transport, such as buses. So it's not that we're not doing anything to alleviate the problem. So we have to look at it in a comprehensive manner. Regarding the shortage of car parks in different districts, we've also learned from different district councils we are aware of the problem, and we will try our best to respond to the shortage of car parks in different districts. Regarding our policy on car parks, I can tell Mr. Yik that we will be conducting a review. Indeed, it is true that we now have a shortage of car parks. As a matter of priority, I think we should consider providing more spaces for the parking of private vehicles. I think congestion in Hong Kong doesn't happen throughout the whole territory, and it doesn't happen around the clock. Mr. Punch. Thank you. In many districts in Hong Kong, it is crowded and there is traffic congestion. The Secretary said that that it is difficult for us to build more roads. I agree with some members that the improvement in the public transport system cannot, catch up with the changes. At a recent district council meeting, members severely criticized the West Rail, and they asked why don't we build a new railway connecting Pt1 and Pt1. Of the 12 recommendations of the TAC, I'd like to ask a question regarding the fourth recommendation. That is, you should start, conducting a study on the ERP, because ERP can help relieve the serious congestion in southern districts. It also suggests that the government will launch a public engagement exercise on the subject. Now, does the government have a timetable on this, and whether you have any specific plans? Because this topic has been discussed many times before, and you'll never be able to arrive at a consensus. And if there's no consensus, how would the government deal with that scenario? Secretary. I'll respond to 2 points raised by Mr. Kwun. First of all, regarding Northwest NT and the transport demand in that area. I have personally heard from the views from the people in the district, especially people concerned about the West Rail. In the past, in LegCo, we've already agreed that for the West Rail, we will be improving the frequency of the trains for the West Rail, but eventually we will be reaching, a bottleneck. But last year, when we implemented the railway development strategy, we already said that we can improve the economic efficiency. But it doesn't mean that there is no demand for public transport in Northwest NT. So we're now looking at the transport need of the whole Northwest NT and see how, through public transport and the development of the railway system, we can cope with that demand. So once we come up with any decision, we will, come back to members. On ERP, I've already said that we will be conducting a public engagement exercise. The government believes that we need to consider implementing a ERP scheme. Previous studies have suggested that in Central we could do that. One consideration was that if we were to implement a ERP zone in Central, we need alternative roads so that for people who want to travel to other districts other than Central, they don't have to enter the Central District. So it was suggested that once the Central Wen Chai bypass is commissioned, that would be the good opportunity. So we're now making use of this opportunity to start the public engagement. So in other words, once the bypass is commissioned, you will start the consultation. We will not wait until the bypass is commissioned. As I said just now, later on we will be implementing this major public engagement exercise. We'll be doing that this year. Mr. Albert Chen, thank you. Regarding these 12 recommendations of the TAC, I'm really disappointed. First of all, it doesn't really, tackle the problem, and also it seems to be, apologizing on behalf of the government for its failure to resolve the problem. It lacks foresight. It doesn't really understand how our society operates, and it has a good grasp of the problem. In 3 areas, I think the government should be concerned. First of all, the free, interchange for buses. The government suggests we should increase the facilities for, park and ride. You have congestion in Central because there are too many buses on the roads. There is no proper interchange facilities, and as a result, you have so many buses on the road competing for business. More than 10 years ago, we already suggested the government should provide for a free, bus interchange service. if you don't implement that policy, you will never be able to reduce the number of buses on the roads. To relieve congestion, other than private vehicles, you have to resolve this historic problem that there are too many buses. In Central and Wan Chai, once they enter a bus bay, then the whole road will become congested. I don't know whether or not the people on the TAC never ride on buses. I think we've been talking about this problem for more than 10 years, and the problem is still there. And secondly, I hope the government will also look into two problems. You want to, reduce the number of people relying on cars, then you can encourage people to walk and use bicycles. So I think the government should consider how it can make it more popular for people to ride bicycles, including the provision of cycling tracks, make it safer for people to cycle. And secondly, there are many places in Hong Kong where people can walk, but the government's policy is that you only provide shelter for pedestrian walkways 500 meters from the MTR station. I did suggest that from the West Ray station you can cover the pedestrian walkway all the way to a major housing development. We're only talking about 800 meters. If you don't cover the remaining 300 to 400 meters, people will be unwilling to walk. So the government needs to focus on the people's behavior. So I think you should really implement free bus interchange as soon as possible. And secondly, you should encourage more people to ride on bicycles. How can you make cycling more popular? There are many places in Hong Kong where people can actually cycle to work, but because of the road condition and so it can't be done. And thirdly, for the major public transport interchanges, say where the buses go to major housing developments, they should be decked. You can encourage people to walk, and if you encourage more, bus interchange, then there could be a reduction in the number of public transport vehicles. I fully agree with the three suggestions raised by Mr. Albert Chen. I also agree that we should encourage people to walk and use mechanical and rely on bicycles rather than mechanical transport for short distance travel. But some of these issues involve planning and the provision of space. The problem that we have too many buses on the road, we have to tackle the problem by restructuring the bus routes. We also need to encourage the passengers to use the interchange services, and of course it is also our policy direction to encourage more interchange concessions.
But the 500-meter requirement is a policy, and that has to be changed. Okay, the Secretary has heard you, Mr. Wu Chi-wai. A few points. The paper indicates a direction, but it doesn't cap the increase in the number of vehicles. In the past, it was just over 1%, but now it averages out to almost 4% per year. I think you should give comprehensive consideration to road use vis-a-vis the increase in private vehicles. I think there should be a policy to cap the increase figures per year. This is the first point. Secondly, many members mentioned bicycles, but congestion is mainly in the urban areas. And if you talk about peak hours, well, yes, it is exactly where we should use bicycles. But then, policy-wise, you just do not allow or encourage the use of bicycles in the urban areas. Secretary, you have to look at Paris and other cities in Europe. They know that PCs are increasing much faster than road building. And that is why they have made policies to support the use of bicycles. Secretary, you have to give some hard thought to this. If you want to improve the road environment, if you understand that there cannot be an ever-increasing road space situation, you should encourage the use of bicycles. And my second point, of course, is to cap the number of private cars. Secretary, talking about capping the increase in private vehicles. We don't have that cap now, but I can share some figures with you. In the last 10 years, from 2003 to 2013, and I'm referring to the information in the paper, the road length has increased by only 0.8% per year, but the increase of private vehicles was up to over 4% per year. And going forward, we might even build roads in a slower pace. And if you talk about capping the number of private car increase, then that cap would have to be put at a very low level. In the period in the past, other modes of transport have only increased mildly. We talked about rationalizing bus routes, so we will not see too many buses on our roads. But if there is an actual need for public transport, we have to allow buses to run on the roads. Yes, we need to pay attention to this, but it is not easy at all to come up with a cap of private car numbers. And secondly, the use of bicycles in urban areas. Yes, we want to encourage the use of bicycles so people do not need to rely on mechanized public transport. But then at the council here and even at panels of the council, since urban roads are already very congested, since there is a high level of mechanized transport already, if we encourage bicycle use, we have to be very mindful about the safety of pedestrians, bikers, and also other motorists. We cannot turn a blind eye to such possible danger. Now, how can we provide more measures for bicycles to be used in the urban area? That is the direction we'll work in. Next member, myself. I have this question. In 2011, you increased FRT by 15%. And then you say in the next 9 to 12 months, vehicle numbers reduced by 1.3%. What about 2012, 2013, and 2014? Is it that the average annual rate was 1.3% less than the 4%? In other words, is it that you still have the knock-on effect after increasing FRT so that the average annual growth was 2.7% instead of 4%? Do we have the figures here? But what I know is after increasing FRT, you see some immediate effect. And then in the next 2-3 years, the pace of increase will slow down. Okay. You cannot have any measure that can suppress the increase for a number of years. You will just do something, take some measure, and then the effect will be there for a short while. This is your policy. There has been a decrease of 1.3% for 9 to 12 months, but then it has gone back up again. Now, if my understanding is incorrect, you can supply the figures. Well, we have the figures of increase, but then it is not our target to lower the increase to 4%. No, the 4% is already the existing rate of increase. You want to slow it down, right, by increasing FRT. But then the thing is, well, unless you increase FRT every time, every year by 15%, then you can reduce the rate of increase by 1.3%, or else the effect would just be there for 1 year. This is my observation. Many middle-class people need to use a private car. Some people, I go to the districts to distribute pamphlets. They say they will buy a car and then they are holiday drivers to take their children out, etc. But then there are people who live in remote areas and they need to drive to go to work. So really, the solution is park and ride. You should not just say you would take a broad brush measure to suppress the number of vehicles, because you are going to wrong some people. These people are not creating congestion as such, and they will be aggrieved. So you should really prescribe the right medicine for the sickness. And the biggest problem now is in peak hours, in busy areas, you see these disaster areas. And I would say you must consider a certain extent of ERP. But my question for you is, are you going to charge every time people go into a busy area, or do you count the duration of stay in an urban busy area? Actually, it's not very meaningful if you count it by times, the number of times people go into urban busy areas. Chairman, number one, increasing FRT or ALF. This is not the only way. Sorry, because of time constraint, please answer my question on ERP. The actual details of ERP will be supplied in the public engagement exercise. I hope it will be time-based. And then there are two other problems I'd like to mention to you. One, illegal parking, people parking at bus stops, and double parking. And one friend told me they don't know the cost of a fixed penalty ticket because he has never received one. So look at Singapore and how people enforce the law. They have aerial cameras. If you increase or step up enforcement against illegal parking, I'm sure you will be greatly helped. Secondly, parking spaces. I heard you say you will give priority to commercial vehicles. In other words, you are never going to do anything for private cars. That is going to hurt very deeply, and you are not going to help the situation. Next question by KK Kwok or James To. Chairman, there are a few points. Some members talked about the insufficiency of parking spaces, and the Secretary says he knows. But recently, there are two government offices buildings which have been torn down, and you are not going to reprovision the parking spaces there. I don't know whether this is for realizing your policy for providing commercial parking spaces as a priority. But it is not that you can provide parking spaces overnight. And I can tell you something about the West Kowloon government offices on West Kowloon reclamation. Suddenly, a few thousand civil servants will go there to work, and this is now being scrutinized by the Finance Committee. I'm a member from that constituency, but actually I don't have strong views about anything except parking spaces. In fact, there are many professionals in that building. Later on, the buildings department is there, and about 1,700 people have a salary over $40,000 per month. They are not directorate officers, and your policy is not to provide parking spaces for them. And what is going to happen to these 1,700 people? If only 1/8 of them will drive to work, there will be 200 people needing parking spaces. So I was talking to the departments concerned. I said, why don't you provide 100-meter parking spaces at market rate, so you provide the spaces without subsidizing your colleagues. You must understand, and well, I'm not discriminating against your officers, but if you compete for parking spaces, the parking spaces will become more expensive, and then residents will say you affect the livelihood as a result. But you must understand that is an office building which is the result of amalgamating 5 smaller government offices building. And you might cause an impact on other residents. You remember there is another government office building on Gascoigne Road, and there are parking spaces there. However, it is going to be torn down as well. So you have to do comprehensive planning. Since the Secretary is here, actually, this afternoon I will have a meeting with the department heads. But I'm asking you to think about the complementary measures that you have to provide when you move government offices buildings. Do you need a response? Chairman, in government buildings and the parking arrangement for civil servants, well, of course, this is not a part of our transport policy per se, but overall speaking, we understand that in commercial areas and also in urban busy areas, indeed we face the problem of insufficient parking spaces. As I was saying to Mr. Frankie Yik, when we have different demands, the priority will certainly be for commercial vehicles because they have to run on our roads and they are part of our commercial activities. Now, what I mean is you should also cater to private cars. But then we are faced with this particular situation. You are concentrating civil servants in a particular spot. Okay, your time is up. Mr. Wong Kwok-hing, thank you. The CE had his election platform. Let me read it out when he talked about transport. Number 17, to expedite public transport development in the 10 infrastructural projects. And number 21, to think about improving the cross-harbour tunnel congestion by streaming traffic. 23, to facilitate transport between Guangdong and Hong Kong, we would try to increase the cross-boundary checkpoint operating hours. Number 40, to promote the popularization of hybrid vehicles by providing more charging stations. And also to commercialize the products of further technology research. So these are 4 platform proposals. But number 1, you are introducing transient population by building the infrastructural projects. And of course, you want to allow Hong Kong private cars and mainland private cars to go to the others areas. And then you say number 21, to consider streaming the traffic from the cross-harbour tunnels, but then you are not talking or doing anything because the tunnels and the bridge are owned by a very powerful mainland tycoon called Zhang Songyou. And then number 23, you are going to introduce transient population into Hong Kong round the clock. And then point 24, hybrid vehicles. What have you done?
It's a waste of time. This is the policy manifesto. Of course, Mr. Frankie Yik suggests that you conduct a review on public transport. Of course, you dare not, conduct that review. There's another item. Coordinate the different forms of public transport, like trams, PLB, taxis, and so on. What coordination have you made? You now tell us. Mr. Zhang, I'm asking you this question. You're a scholar. Is there any city in which you would want to bring in 10 million of transient population into the city to increase the traffic volume? Do you have a policy in respect of private vehicles? We've been lobbying for increasing the seating capacity for PLB by 4 seats. 4 seats only take that much space, but for private vehicles would accommodate you alone would take up that much more space. So what sort of policy are you talking about? So what are you exactly talking about? What incentives do you have to induce people to ride on trains? I think it will be a disaster if one listens to your advice. There are more and more accidents and incidents on MTR trains. So it's a waste of time talking to you. Our policy now is that the rich will call the shots. Those who earn less than $14,000 a month cannot have the right to elect a CE. They will never find a CE to speak on their behalf. We all know that we need to limit the number of private vehicles. We need to promote public transport, but then the railway system doesn't work. So what can we do? We ask you to help us to reduce the number of private vehicles on the road and provide more space for public transport. Just imagine the railways, the taxis, the PLB and so on. PLB is ranked number 5, and then the SA buses number 5. What about trams? What have you done in respect of trams? I think your time is up, Mr. Leung. Next, Mr. Gary Fan. Chairman, do I have time to ask my question? What I'd like to say to the government is that the proposed FRT would only hurt the lower middle class with a relatively lower income, because there is no alternative public transport for them, and it simply will not reduce the incentive to private vehicles. In 2011, the TD conducted a survey on people's traveling habits, and 55% of the people who bought private vehicles showed that they want to save time. Those who don't buy vehicles, 51% is for economic reasons. Only 4% indicated that it's because public transport is very convenient that they choose not to buy their own vehicles. So the reality is that the people of Hong Kong, if it is economically viable, they're inclined to buy their own cars because it's more convenient and it helps them save time. According to the report on road congestion, we're told that for the major roads in Hong Kong, they're occupied mainly by private vehicles, and because of that, we have congestion. Take Tseung Kwan O, for example. The Tseung Kwan O Tunnel is congested during peak hours in the morning. 51% of the vehicles are private cars. Only 8% are buses and PLBs. The government's paper in paragraph 5 tell us that you need to rely on reorganization of buses to reduce the number of buses. But the TD's figures have confirmed that reducing the number of buses will not relieve the congestion on the roads. So I believe the measures that you have implemented are futile and counterproductive. I would instead suggest that you should come up with short, medium, and long-term measures to improve on the road congestion, so that the railway system and bus routes, for example, from Tseung Kwan O to Tsuen Wan and Sha Tin, the point-to-point service, without taking up too much road space, provide a convenient public transport service to the public and reduce the incentive to buy their own cars. Why is the government not doing that? Why do you only rely on punitive measures like increasing the FRT to punish the middle class? Secretary. Just now, Mr. Fan, quoted some figures. Indeed, it is true that private cars take up most of our road space. I've never said that we believe that by just that we only aim at reducing the number of buses on the roads. We were saying that by route reorganization, we will want to improve on the efficiency, and we need to enhance the service. But if we don't resolve the problem of road congestion, the service cannot be improved. So therefore, we cannot ignore the problem of road congestion. Have you considered giving priority for buses on the roads so that they have priority to use road space? Because that can provide convenient public transport to the public, increase the incentive to take public transport, reduce the incentive for them to buy their own cars. First of all, and I've indicated in the past that it is our policy that we are giving priority to public transport, and for usage of our roads, we already have many, roads where the buses are priority. KK Kwok. I'm worried I might have repeated the points already raised by other members because I was attending another meeting. First of all, I hope that the TAC will be careful in considering the TAC's recommendations, because the situation has changed. The government's direction now in terms of development is that I think the government must realize that more and more people are now living in remote areas. The government is now promoting Tuen Mun and Yunnan South, Shui Kiu, and Tung Chung. So in all these areas, there are many people who have to consider buying their own cars. It is just that they need a point. That is, before they enter the most congested areas, they can park their cars. So the government is now studying into how we can provide more park and ride facilities and bus interchanges. I hope you will do more in those areas. The government has not done enough. I've tried to use these bus interchange services myself, but I simply cannot find any seats on the buses. So what you're doing is totally unfair to people living in the remote areas. And secondly, I don't think relying on a quota system will work. The example of Singapore has proven that no matter how much you charge, the levy, the growth, the Singapore rate in the number of vehicles is also very rapid. Thirdly, the ERP. I'm worried that in the most congested areas, for example, in Singapore or London, in the most congested areas, it would appear that the ERP scheme may work in the short term, but not in the long term. When the motorists are used to the scheme, well, it's like, paying a fee. It doesn't really help relieve the congestion at all. Instead, the government has suggested that we should provide for more pedestrian prisons. I think that would be more viable because vehicles will not be able to enter those areas, and the pedestrian prisons that you've installed can ensure that there is less pollution, for example. But the government, it's a pity that the government suddenly decided to scrap that the one that they've set up in Wong Kwok. And secondly, regarding the growth in the number of vehicles, I hope the government can provide some figures. In the TC's report, I think, and the figures in that report shows that the document is silent about that. In fact, for the last 10 years, we have more roads being built, and outside of the busiest areas, the congestion is not as bad as it used to be. So I think the most serious problem is actually in respect of the 3 cross-harbour tunnels, which is the root cause of most of the congestion. So do you have any plans to improve on the congestion problem because of vehicles, waiting to go into the tunnels? I think when we talk about the concept of streaming the traffic and spreading them out among the 3 harbour crossings, we're saying that even if there is congestion in the cross-harbour tunnels, it would not affect it shouldn't affect the traffic, volume. We had suggested that we should increase the toll for the Hong Kong cross-harbour tunnel and reduce the fare for the other 2 crossings, but we decided that we should wait until the Central Venture Bypasses Commission. Okay, I think we've already overrun already, so I declare that we'll take a 5-minute break and we'll come back for the 2 remaining items.